So what is it that Digital Foundry doesn't like about the Switch 2 screen? Let's talk about it. I talked about the review that Digital Foundry did about the Switch 2, and it was really in-depth because these guys are the best of the best. And in my video, I said that Digital Foundry said that the Switch 1 screen was actually better than the Switch 2 screen. And on that video, someone commented that it was about the response time and the ghosting, and they're totally right. I should have been clearer in my messaging. But why stop there? Let's talk about what it is that Digital Foundry pointed out and why it does matter, but also why it doesn't matter. And like that comment said, the biggest criticism is the ghosting and the response time. But what are those things? Now, I'm not an expert, so I might get this kind of wrong, but the response time is basically how quickly the pixel can actually change from gray to gray. And ghosting is when that gray to gray response time isn't as quick as the frame rate, so you end up seeing ghost images while the next frame is already showing. So it ends up looking really smeared and blurry. And Digital Foundry pointed out that this is one of the slowest screens on the market. And ever since that, other people have been looking into this and they all seem to confirm it. Even channels dedicated to just reviewing computer monitors have said that this is one of the slowest screens on the market, period. When comparing it to the cheapest monitors, some of these people were able to show that the cheapest monitors respond at twice the speed than the Switch 2. And then HDR was another problem. Nits is how bright the screen can get. And if you want to have real HDR, you want to have a certain brightness level and a certain darkness level, and that gives you the contrast, and HDR needs a really high contrast. Well, the Switch 2 has basic contrast. It's pretty much the same contrast that you get on the Switch 1. And what this means is that if you're in a really dark room, but you're looking out a bright window, you should be able to see both images clearly, and the Switch 2 isn't really capable of that. What the Switch 2 does do better is that it has a wide color gamut, so that means it can recreate colors in a much more vibrant and pleasing way. So even though it's not really HDR, the screen does look better because it's sharper, and the colors are just much more vibrant to look at. So does this really matter? Well, yes and no. Yes, because they're touting that this is an HDR screen and they're trying to show how much better it is, when in reality it's one of the worst screens on the market and it's not even HDR. But no, because it's really about your experience. Although the computer can pick up that the screen is smearing and that the brightness isn't really as bright as it should be, the screen does look better because it's much more vibrant, the screen is sharper, and it is brighter than the original Switch screen. So Digital Foundry wasn't wrong when they said that it was a subpar screen, but it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. It's one of the worst screens out there, but it's still a really nice screen. It's kind of like comparing 120 Hz to 240 Hz. A lot of people aren't going to notice the difference, and the ones that do aren't even looking at 120 Hz anyway.